Maltese student Mark Camilleri is facing a prison sentence. He's on trial for publishing obscene material.
I published a story which was deemed to be obscene and pornographic by the police, so they took me to court for it.
Mark is a postgraduate history student and editor of a college newspaper. In October 2009, he published a story with strong sexual content. The university rector banned that edition of the paper and reported him to the police.
We used to put newspapers everywhere, literally. You know, you put these newspapers here, you put newspapers here, and the university staff would pick them up, probably take one for themselves, you know, and put it in the pocket, you know, but then they would go out, find the dustbin, and they would throw it away, or they would go to their office and throw it in their dustbins. There was a direct order by the rector, you know, to throw away the newspaper.
So you think they read it first and then threw it away?
Oh yes, of course. If there was something which was worth banning, it is of course worth reading, you know. We also put the newspaper online because of the large demand of people who wanted to read the story.
The ban backfired. A student newspaper with a tiny circulation suddenly became notorious. Almost everyone on campus read it, students and staff. Malta's Catholic population was scandalized. Mark was prosecuted, but remains defiant.
When issue 8 was banned, we could have done, for example, to republish the issue under different editors. So republish the same issue, and you would have 100 different editors. Now, what the police would do in that situation, they would have the obligation to prosecute all of the 100 different editors. And that would be something, I think, which the police would find impossible, to prosecute 100 editors at once.
But that didn't happen, and Mark, as the only publisher, is the one exposed.
In the case that Mark is found guilty, he runs the risk of facing up to 9 months imprisonment for publishing a story, and obviously facing a fine, a fairly hefty fine. Obviously that's going to have a radical impact on him and his life chances further on.
The trial has been hanging over him for 18 months, but Judgment Day is now 3 weeks away. Malta joined the European Union in 2004. For tourists, it's a sunny, tranquil place, somewhere to unwind and relax. But behind this laid-back facade, the locals live according to a strong sense of tradition and ceremony. Malta's constitution defines it as a Catholic state. Divorce is forbidden, public blasphemy is an offence, and art and literature that wouldn't raise an eyebrow in other European Union states can lead to censorship and even jail for authors. Soon after his arrest, Mark formed a protest movement and took to the streets.
Many people were angry about the censorship which was going on, and the Front Against Censorship main aim is to abolish the laws which are justifying this wave of censorship by the police in Malta.
Dak ifisser illi jekk ikun hawn xi ħadd ieħor illi joħroġ storja illi acknowledge letterarju għoli ħafna tal-pulizija jista' jkun pornografiku u xejn, dan jista' jeħel iktar żmien ħabs u multa ikbar.
We, as a Front Against Censorship, want the abolition of the censorship regime. When the censorship regime would eventually be destroyed, the Front Against Censorship would cease to exist. It is a very big challenge to engage the people politically in the issue of civil liberties.
With censorship in the news, Mark has been asked to appear on a talk show.
I have been invited here to discuss censorship, about pornography in a televised debate. My aim today is to try to change this type of cheap discourse into a much more concrete and political critique.
But it's an unpromising start for any serious discussion.
Nothing left for me to say. There's no more wicked games to play. It's time for me to walk away. I am alright.
Eventually, the debate does get underway. Up against a retired policeman and experienced politicians, Mark is outgunned.
Imma li toffendi il-moralità u ċertu idejat u ċertu konċetti dak huwa dritt illi tijulek iċ-ċarta fundamentali ta' dritt tal-bniedem u għandu jiġi applikat Malta bħalma jiġi applikat id-dinja kollha.
His central argument is rubbished by the policeman.
Bl-affarijiet għall-ħares naslu bl-istess argument li għattajt inti, għadda fil-ħodu titlaxxemx.
The debate continues in this vein for half an hour.
So what happened there, Mark?
It wasn't very good. You know, the program was very unjournalistic. It was very unbalanced. I was the only person who was speaking against censorship. That could provide an image that sort of I am a lone voice, which I am not. They were saying that if things offend the morality of society, their personal morality, these things which offend, they should be censored. That's utterly wrong, you know. Freedom of speech gives you the right to criticize, be satirical, be offensive.
Jgħid affarijiet li mhux vera u tiġi tgħidli dak huwa il-problema ta' min qed jarah u ejja come on. Alla ħaresaw ħafna nies bħalek fis-soċjetà tagħna x'kieku vera sejrin minn ħażin għall-ar.
Do you feel that you will need to do more things like this to get your message across?
Yes, definitely, but at the same time, I have to do it in a better context.
With Judgment Day looming large, his next move is more carefully planned. This time, he's targeting a broadly sympathetic audience, the arts community of Valletta. Mark and the Front Against Censorship are staging an art exhibition reflecting on freedom of speech and repression.
We set up the exhibition because we needed to engage the artistic community in political discourse.
The evening's going well for Mark. A decent crowd has gathered, including some press. He appoints himself MC for the evening.
Il-komunità artistika u mhux biss taffettwa anke wkoll ġurnalisti, kittieba u l-isfera kollha ta' min jippubblika u min involut fil-business tal-medja wkoll fl-aħħar mill-aħħar. Dan huwa issue illi għalkemm forsi ma tantx nitkellmu fuq fil-medja huwa qawwi ħafna u jeżisti ġifieri b'mod reali ħafna. U fil-fatt issa ħalli il-persuni tad-debate li hawn fil-panel ġifieri biex jitkellmu fuq dan is-suġġett biktar wiesa u biktar mod serju kif nitkellem fuq.
But out of the blue, Mark comes under fire from someone he assumed was a supporter.
My presence here this evening is most probably a mistake. The reason I'm saying this is that I never considered myself to be a supporter of the Front Against Censorship. The very notion that by censoring obscene words or obscene scenes, one is actually censoring art or literature is, I'm sorry to say, simply immature. Stop calling it literature. And say it out loud. We want to protect and promote filth. Fine, granted. We want to protect and promote crude works of fiction and insulting visual media. Fine, granted. Art and literature in Malta do not need the Front Against Censorship. And if the Front Against Censorship wants to do something for the arts and literature in Malta, it should take the first step and show the censorship board that we are beyond this ridiculous nitpicking phase in our cultural development and simply disband.
As Anton's criticisms build, Mark gets ever more agitated and eventually walks out.
Artists need to stop showing every single doodle they draw at every single invitation they get and finally start making some serious career judgments.
I was a bit disappointed that I was criticizing his whole movement and he just left the room like after a couple of paragraphs from my speech. So like, I took the work to write this about you and this should somehow influence you and you're just leaving and you're not even listening. I believe that the Front Against Censorship needs to be criticized.
As the audience drifts away, Mark heads home and checks online for the press's review of the event.
Oh, Anton's argument is a headline on the Times of Malta. This is horrible. He came to discussion just because I trusted my friend's sincere opinion that he would give something beneficial to the discussion. And now he's having a lot of coverage just because he was controversial, just because he was antagonistic to the front.
The paper has largely ignored the exhibits and the other speakers and run with Anton's argument that only good art is worth defending.
Anton's position is, I do not agree with people going to jail, but I will stay here and drink my coffee and because the artists who are going to jail have published bad art. I'm sorry, but that is very ridiculous.
They have to stop expecting people to support them automatically. They do not deserve support. They have to win support. They have to work for support.
My aim is not to convince people like Anton, not at all. My aim is to convince politicians.
Parliamentary support is hard to come by, but Labour MP Owen Bonici has been following Mark's trial closely. He agrees that artists have the right to offend people's morality.
I believe that no fictitious story should ever land a person into the criminal court.
Mr. Bonici's support for Mark's liberal position has also left him open to attack.
I received some letters regarding the issue of censorship. It was a surprise for me because I didn't ever expect people to send over anonymous letters citing that I'm the work of Satan, which is really worrying, because I thought that the Maltese society was much more tolerant.
Bonici believes Mark's antagonistic campaigning has provoked the Maltese Parliament into doubling the penalty for obscenity offences.
The punishment was rendered even harsher. And this was, I'm sure, this was the result of Mark Camilleri and the Front. Had Mark Camilleri and the Front not been active in the local seat promoting freedom of expression, I'm sure that this particular provision in the code would not have been amended.
Now Mark and Bonici are collaborating on a bill to draw a distinction between pornography and literature.
Mark and myself will propose at a future date a change in the laws in order to make some sense in what, to my opinion, needs definitely to change.
Mark's more pressing concern is to stay out of jail.
Well, if I get a sentence, I would really be angry with that because I don't deserve a sentence. I don't want to be a martyr, of course. If I was sent to prison, I will lose my job and I will lose my place and I'll be homeless and all this stuff.
With 2 days to go before his final court appearance, he's been summoned by his lawyer to go over the final details of the case.
Oh.
Mark,
Bonjour.
take a seat, please. So how are you, Mark?
Well, thank you very much.
Good. So as you know, next Monday is the big day.
Yes.
We'll have to present our case to the court.
Yes.
Essentially what we are discussing here before this court is what is literature, what amounts to pornographic, and to what extent can the state stifle artistic expression. I'm still fairly confident of our argument because obviously our argument is substantiated by a lot of case law, and very important case law, even case law by the European Court of Human Rights.
But Malta's most recent precedent was a worry. The courts upheld a ban on a play called Stitching.
What implications would the sentence upholding the ban on stitching would have on our case?
Obviously, the fact that we've had a recent case such as that decided by the Constitutional Court in and of itself would never help. We would have preferred to have a good judgment, but you know.
No, we'll see then.
They go over the further details in a confidential meeting lasting half an hour. His lawyer then reminds Mark just what's at stake.
Keep in mind the risks involved, the chances of imprisonment. Obviously, if it's a victory, it will be a very important victory, not just for you, Mark, but for, I think, for fundamental freedom of expression in Malta. Good luck with getting the best outcome for yourself and for the cause that you are fighting.
Thank you very much.
Best of
See
luck.
you. Yes.
See you, Mark.
See you next Monday.
Mark's heading to meet the theatre director who was caught up in that recent case.
When stitching was banned, everybody was surprised. Nobody had expected that a play could be banned so abruptly in Malta. And it isn't a play which has any damaging material. It isn't even scandalizing to me. So I can't understand why they have even banned stitching. But many people who were furious at the fact that stitching got banned joined immediately and were a big part of the front against censorship.
Stitching, which in the UK was rated 14, was banned in Malta on the grounds of blasphemy and obscenity.
Well, what?
I don't know. Congratulations, I guess.
Director Chris Gatt still rehearses the play, determined to get the ban overturned.
Let it, sort of seep in.
Dream the house, the kids, the dog,
Up again.
happily ever after. That's what hurts when you lose them.
We were pushing the envelope. We felt the need to get Malta up into the 21st century, to put on productions which were discussing issues and events that were happening around the world in a more frank and a more visceral manner.
Do you want to go down that road?
No.
Do you?
No,
Do you really want to go down?
I'm
Because
sorry.
I can go down that road if you want to.
Theatre has to have the ability to shock. Art has to have the ability to shock. When I see a Francis Bacon painting, I want to run away. That does not mean that there shouldn't be a Francis Bacon painting.
Look, I understand when you say that you don't have time, but I think that you just exaggerate.
Don't tell me I'm exaggerating. I know what I feel.
You're only 30.
Yes, so? What? And I hang around waiting for you for another 4 years, do I? I don't have the time to around, Stuart. We don't have this child now, that's it for us.
Where are you with your case?
I am presuming that we will lose the case because the court will make reference to the constitutional sentence that went down on the play stitching.
In a way, you are more exposed than we are.
Yes.
In the sense that theatre is at the end of the day, although it is a public event, you choose. Their argument, which they're coming up with, is protection of minors. And I think that is the strongest argument they're going to come up with.
Yes.
The fact that that is a hypocritical argument because essentially, if you look at the actual situation when it comes to minors, they need protections from much more important things than a piece of literature.
Chris's advice moves from the trial to Mark's campaigning style.
But Mark, going to public speak with a coffin saying that art is dead, is that necessarily going to bring people on your side?
Yes, definitely. I'm sorry. Our aims are the same, but you have a different perspective maybe on protest. The thing is that I believe that in order to gain the support of the people, you have to shout and bang and show your numbers rather than whispering and taking things slowly.
I still feel that sometimes you need to play a game of chess if you want to get your way.
One thing Chris and Mark do agree on, though, is the inconsistency of Malta's censors.
They basically objected to the sexuality of the play. They objected to certain language in the play, which ironically they themselves then allow in films. Exact phrases are used in films which come out with a 16 certificate, but are suddenly objectionable on stage. It was the film Burn After Reading, so anybody who knows the film will know exactly what the phrase is I'm referring to.
This is the biggest hypocrisy of how the state works. It works on material which might be hostile to its morality in a political and ideological sense, but then when it comes to certain economic interests, it backs off and allows the business. We have in Malta a rising trend of strip clubs which can openly be found in Parcheville and Parcheville. It's showtime. So this is the biggest hypocrisy of the state. The government isn't clamping down on these, but it is clamping down on stories which presumably are depicting very strong and ugly realities of Maltese society.
It's judgment day for Mark. He makes his way to the courthouse, knowing the wrong decision could put him behind bars. Just 5 minutes later, and Mark's unexpectedly back on the street.
So Mark, what happened there?
Well, actually nothing happened because the prosecution didn't bring the case with them. They had a problem with bringing up the case against me, so they asked for another time, for another session, for another court session, to postpone the court session. This means, what happened today, that the police haven't yet brought a very strong case against me. So it is very good for my morale, and hopefully this signifies that what will they present is very weak.
Mark's trial started 18 months ago and has involved 6 separate appearances in court. He now has to wait another 3 months before he discovers his fate.
If I'm found innocent, it would be a great victory for Maltese literature, and we could publish more stories of the type that we have published without any legal problems whatsoever.
Win or lose, it's clear that Malta's deep-rooted traditions could prevent Mark's broader campaign from succeeding. Eventually, though, external factors may prove more telling. The growing influence of the European Union is likely to affect Malta culturally and legally.